The groan started low, a guttural complaint deep in the ship's belly. It resonated through the steel deck, vibrating in the soles of my boots and crawling up my spine. Outside, the world was a churning black void, punctuated only by the brief, violent flashes of lightning that ripped the sky open like a canvas torn in two. Each flash revealed the monstrous waves, 40-foot leviathans rising and falling with savage indifference, threatening to swallow us whole. The air tasted of salt and ozone, thick and heavy, pressing down on my chest. I gripped the handrail tighter, the cold steel a small comfort in the face of such overwhelming power. The ship lurched again, a sickening sideways slide that sent a toolbox skittering across the deck. A clang echoed through the passageway, followed by a muffled curse. We were dancing with the devil tonight, and he wasn't a gracious partner. Every creak and groan of the ship was a scream of protest, a desperate plea against the relentless assault of the storm. Fear, cold and sharp, pricked at the edges of my resolve. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the chaos, but the roaring wind and the crashing waves were relentless, a constant reminder of our precarious position. What was it about being out here, on this tiny metal island in the middle of a raging ocean, that felt so primal, so utterly, terrifyingly alive? The radio crackled to life, a voice strained and urgent cutting through the din. "All hands brace for impact! We're taking on water in Compartment 4! My heart leaped into my throat. Compartment 4 was right below us. I glanced at Finn, his face pale but determined. He gave me a curt nod, and we both moved, adrenaline surging through our veins, pushing back the fear, replacing it with a cold, focused purpose. We were sailors, and this was our ship. We would fight for her. The smell of salt water and machine oil always brought me back to the Chesapeake. Not this metallic, industrial tang, but the briny, sun-baked scent of my grandfather's wooden sailboat, the Sea Serpent. He built her himself, plank by painstaking plank, his calloused hands shaping the wood with a love and reverence that bordered on the religious. I remember spending countless summer afternoons with him, the sun warm on my face, the gentle rocking of the boat lulling me into a state of blissful contentment. He taught me everything I knew about the sea, how to read the currents, how to anticipate the wind, how to respect its unpredictable power. He used to tell me stories of his own adventures, of sailing around the world, of battling storms even fiercer than this one. He'd spin yarns of mythical sea creatures and lost treasures, his eyes twinkling with mischief. But beneath the bravado, I always sensed a deeper truth, a profound understanding of the sea's capacity for both beauty and destruction. He taught me that the ocean was not to be conquered, but to be respected, to be approached with humility and caution. He said, "The sea will always win in the end, boy. The best you can do is learn to dance with her." I remember one particular afternoon, a storm brewing on the horizon, mirroring the one raging outside now. The sky was a bruised purple, and the wind was whipping the waves into a frenzy. My grandfather, instead of heading back to shore, steered the Sea Serpent directly into the heart of the storm. I was terrified, clinging to his leg, begging him to turn back. He just smiled, a serene, almost mystical expression on his face. "Don't be afraid, Liam," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "Feel the power of the sea. Let it wash over you. It will teach you things you can't learn anywhere else." And as the storm raged around us, I felt a strange sense of peace, a connection to something larger than myself. That day, I learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the ability to face it head-on. It was the day I truly understood what it meant to be a sailor. And now, years later, as I braced myself against the onslaught of this monstrous storm, I felt my grandfather's presence beside me, his hand on my shoulder, guiding me through the darkness. Block 3, the alarm blared again, a shrill, insistent scream that cut through the groaning of the ship. Not just a warning, but at general quarters. Every man aboard knew what that meant. Something had broken, something vital, and all hands were needed to fix it, or die trying. I stumbled out of my bunk, the world tilting violently, already pulling on my boots. The air hung thick with the metallic tang of fear and the acrid bite of ozone. On deck, chaos reigned. The storm had become a living thing, a howling beast clawing at the warship. Waves, now undeniably 40 feet or higher, crashed over the bow, turning the deck into a treacherous, icy river. Men scrambled for handholds, their faces illuminated by the flickering emergency lights, their shouts lost in the wind's fury. I saw Lieutenant Davies, his face pale but resolute, barking orders, pointing towards the damaged radar array on the foremast. That was it. The ship was blind. "Miller! Get up there! Help Johnson secure that array!" he yelled, his voice barely audible. My gut twisted. Johnson was a good man, a quiet, dependable soul who always had a kind word. But the foremast, that was suicide. Still, orders were orders. I clipped my safety harness, took a deep breath, and started to climb. The wind tore at me, trying to rip me from the ladder. Each rung was slick with seawater, each handhold a test of strength. The ship bucked and swayed, throwing me against the metal frame. As I neared the top, I saw Johnson. He was struggling with a snapped cable, his face contorted with effort. A wave crashed over the bow, engulfing us both in a wall of icy water. I clung to the ladder for dear life, my lungs burning, my muscles screaming. When the water receded, I saw Johnson. He was gone. The safety harness, snapped clean through, dangled uselessly in the wind. The world seemed to slow, the roar of the storm fading into a dull hum. Johnson was gone. Just like that. A good man, swallowed by the sea. Numbly, I secured the array, my hands moving on autopilot. I don't remember climbing down. I don't remember anything until I was back below deck, huddled in a corner, shivering uncontrollably. The storm raged on, but inside, something had broken. Something irreparable. Block 4, years have passed since that night, but the ocean still lives inside me. It whispers in my dreams, a constant reminder of the power, the indifference, the insatiable hunger of the sea. I left the Navy shortly after. Couldn't stand the sight of the water. Couldn't stand the sound of the waves. I live inland now, as far from the coast as I can get. I work as a mechanic, fixing cars in a small, dusty town. The work is simple, repetitive, a balm for a mind that still races with the memories of that storm. I keep to myself, avoid crowds, avoid anything that might trigger the flashbacks. Loud noises, sudden movements, the smell of salt air, they all bring it rushing back. Sometimes, at night, I see Johnson's face in the darkness. His quiet smile, his gentle eyes. I wonder what he would have done with his life, if the sea hadn't claimed him. Would he have married? Had children? Lived a long and happy life? The questions haunt me, unanswered, unanswerable. I tried therapy, once. Talked about the guilt, the trauma, the feeling that I should have done something, anything, to save him. The therapist listened patiently, nodded sympathetically, offered platitudes about grief and acceptance. But she didn't understand. She didn't understand the weight of the ocean, the cold grip of the waves, the utter helplessness of being swallowed by the storm. So, I stopped going. I learned to live with the ghosts, to carry the burden in silence. I find solace in routine, in the predictability of my days. Wake up, go to work, fix cars, come home, eat dinner, go to sleep. Repeat. It's not a life, but it's a way to survive. Sometimes, I catch myself staring out at the horizon, even though there is no ocean here, only fields of wheat and rolling hills. I imagine the waves, the towering walls of water, the endless expanse of blue. And I remember Johnson. I remember the storm. And I know that a part of me will always be lost at sea. The ocean claimed him that night, but it took a piece of me too. A piece that I will never get back. The dawn arrived not as a gentle caress, but as a brutal unveiling. The storm, spent and exhausted, finally relinquished its grip. The warship, battered and scarred, floated on a sea that was still turbulent, but no longer murderous. The sky, a bruised purple and gray, slowly bled into a fragile blue. We emerged from our compartments, ghosts blinking in the sudden light. The ship was a disaster zone. Gear was strewn everywhere, twisted metal groaned, and the air hung thick with the smell of salt and ozone. Chief Miller found me on the bridge, staring out at the horizon. His face was lined with fatigue, but his eyes held a strange glint of something. Not triumph, not exactly. Perhaps acceptance. "We made it, kid," he said, his voice raspy. "We actually made it." I nodded, unable to speak. The image of the wave, the faces of the men I'd served with, replayed in my mind. The fear, the camaraderie, the raw, primal struggle for survival. It was all etched into my soul. Then I saw them. Figures on the deck, huddled around something. As I approached, the scene sharpened into focus. They were gathered around the body of Lieutenant Hayes. A blanket covered him, but I knew. We all knew. The weight of it crashed down on me. It wasn't just a storm we had fought. It was mortality itself. Hayes, the confident, unflappable officer, reduced to this. A wave had swept him overboard during the height of the storm. They'd tried to find him, but the sea had claimed him as its own. A profound silence fell over the deck. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Chief Miller stepped forward and gently removed the blanket, revealing Hayes' face. His eyes were closed, his expression peaceful. The salt spray had left a faint sheen on his skin. Miller spoke, his voice low and thick with emotion. "He was a good man," he said, his gaze sweeping over the faces of the crew. "A damn good officer. He wouldn't want us to mourn him. He'd want us to remember him, to learn from this. To be better." A few choked sobs broke the silence. Someone began to weep openly. I felt a tear trace a cold path down my own cheek. It wasn't just grief. It was the realization that life was fragile, precious, and fleeting. That we were all, in the end, at the mercy of forces far greater than ourselves. The sun finally broke through the clouds, casting a golden light on the scene. It illuminated the faces of the crew, etched with exhaustion and sorrow, but also with a newfound respect for life, for each other, and for the unforgiving power of the sea. We stood there, united in our grief, bound by the shared experience of facing death and surviving. Later that day, we committed Hayes' body to the sea. A simple ceremony, a few words spoken, a volley of shots fired into the air. The waves closed over him, and he was gone. But he wasn't forgotten. He lived on in our memories, in the lessons he had taught us, and in the way we would carry ourselves from that day forward. As the warship limped back to port, I stood on the deck, watching the waves. They were calmer now, almost gentle. But I knew that beneath the surface, the storm still raged. It raged in my heart, in my mind, in my soul. It was a reminder of the power of nature, the fragility of life, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. I knew that I would never be the same. The storm had changed me, forged me in its crucible of fear and survival. And as I looked out at the horizon, I knew that I was ready to face whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that even in the darkest of storms, there is always hope. There is always light. And there is always the enduring bond of humanity that can carry us through anything. The sea roared a final, mournful farewell to Lieutenant Hayes. And we, the survivors, sailed on.